Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode with my good friend Sanbib Ahmed of our famous Hook Turn podcast. Sanbib, how are you doing today? I think you're in the lovely city of Wollongong.
Yes, I'm doing quite well. I'm looking forward to discussing some of this news that's come out, particularly in relation to a major Toyota product
Yeah.
that we're going to be discussing in a bit.
Yeah, so we have our usual three topics today. It's actually quite interesting because the first topic will be of lots of relevance to many Australian new car buyers, so to speak, because it's a very popular model, and that is the Toyota Hilux, which is um, there's a new version of the Hilux. It's essentially a facelift, but we will get onto that in just a bit. We're also going to be talking about another new electric SUV, but this time it's not from a Chinese brand. It's actually from a very well established, albeit niche brand, which is Renault. So Renault have the French manufacturer, very popular in Europe, not so popular in Australia, have come out with pricing and specs for their new Scenic EV. So we'll talk about that as well. And then finally, another electric ute. So this one is not officially available in Australia, but it's interesting, perhaps an interesting indicator of where the EV market is going more broadly, and that is the Ford F-150 Lightning. So there's some news about a potential production pause for Ford's EV, full-size EV ute in the US. So let's get started with the Hilux. So we have a new Hilux that was revealed. Was it? I think it was last week or yeah, it was early last
Correct.
week.
It was basically leaked in Thailand, and then like a couple of days later, it was announced.
Yeah, exactly. So it's actually it's interesting. Well, actually, the first thing to say before we get onto the actual details of the vehicle, and just to show how significant the model is for the Australian market is it was revealed early, so last week after, as Sandra said, leaked and then officially revealed. And Toyota in Australia, just for context, have already announced that it'll be on sale next month, so in December, which is a very, very short lead time. Like normally you see cars, even like for example, I think the worst example is probably Volkswagen with the ID range. Came like ID4 came out in 2022, early 2023 maybe, and it just came on sale earlier this year. So it's like a 2 to 3 year lead time. And other models you often see at least like 6 months, 12 months before their initial reveal to it actually uh the initial reveal of the full production spec model to the on sale date. So I think it goes to show how important the Hilux is to Australian buyers and the Australian market and Toyota sales in Australia for it to be sort of already available, like literally, 3 weeks after being revealed. So that's some interesting context. But anyway, onto the vehicle itself. So it has a new design language. It's Toyota is calling it their Cyber Sumo styling, which is interesting because it's sort of like a bit of a riff on their hammerhead design that you can see in the new Camry, um the latest CHR SUV, and some of their more road-focused sort of passenger car products. So it's sort of has some similarity to that, but it's sort of broadly in the same design language, like with the slim headlights and everything. But you can see it's not a huge departure from the outgoing Hilux, it has a little bit of its own thing as well. So I think some of the doors are still shared with the outgoing model, and so on. In terms of the engine, they've sort of dropped some of the older and less powerful engines. So it's essentially the same engine across the entire lineup. So it's now a 2.8 liter, the 2.8 liter 1GD dash FTV diesel. So yes, that sounds like a fax machine, but what it is, it's just their standard 2.8 liter diesel. And in more expensive automatic models above certain trim levels, you get mild hybrid technology, which Toyota calls their V-Active 48 volt technology. So this is not the same as their usual hybrids that the Prius pioneered. This is more of a mild hybrid technology, so it assists the engine and in with certain ancillary functions like the air conditioning and so on. It create maybe 10% reduction in fuel economy. So I think potentially the biggest difference is probably the interior and some of the safety technology. The interior is completely revamped. Now have a 12.3 inch infotainment display, digital cluster as well, either 7 inch or 12.3 inch again. You have the latest generation of Toyota Safety Sense, so that is their active safety systems. You have, the autonomous emergency braking, the safe exit alert. So if there's a cyclist running past you and you're trying to open the door, it'll warn you so you don't door the cyclist or or a pedestrian or another car. All of that adaptive cruise control and so on. So Sandra, what are your initial thoughts on the new Hilux?
Look, the design is actually really good in my opinion. I think that yes, it's not it reminds me like some people said the Hilux might not look as unique now. It does actually take some inspiration from some Chinese designs.
Mhm.
Probably not inspiration, but they're all taking sort of ideas from each other. And now it might not look distinctly Japanese, but certainly from the rear, it looks fine. And the front, like basically, it's a car that's inoffensive to look at, not
Mm.
something that's like, wow, this looks incredible, but
Yeah.
it
Definitely better
it's
than the Tasman, in my opinion.
yes, better than the Tasman. Yeah, correct. And other than that, the main flaw with the Hilux has always just been the interior,
Yeah.
right? Prior models, they were like everything is amazing, engine's amazing, the way it drives is well,
Mm.
not amazing, but it does the job, and obviously extremely reliable. It was always the interior that let it down
Mm.
because it had Toyota's old, basically interior setup. This is really good because not only does the base model come with the 12.3-inch screen, it
Mm.
basically comes standard with a lot more tech, even from the
Mm.
base model. So even the base models all have things like blind spot monitoring, road cross traffic alert, etc.
Yeah, it's
And
really
the
good
more
safety package.
sophisticated, yeah, and the much more sophisticated lane trace and everything that
Mm.
Toyota's other Toyota models have always had for quite a long time. So it basically brings up the Hilux with Toyota's modern day technology, still keeping the reliability. They haven't gone full hybrid. We know that the mild hybrid from the current applications doesn't really have the same fuel efficiency gains that the full hybrids do in their Camrys, their Corollas, etc. But still good enough. And I don't think too many um, people buying the Hilux are looking for maximum fuel efficiency anyway. They're more looking for power and torque and that reliability. On top of that, the most interesting thing is they will be eventually bringing out a battery electric variant of it. Yes, a very
Yeah.
limited battery electric variant, but still it goes to show that they're thinking about the future and being like, okay, yes, right now, especially in the youth segment and the four-wheel drive segment, diesel is still king, but they are looking towards the future and being like, okay, let's see what the market is for an electric Ute, because right now it's like the LTV E9, that
ET60
one.
or something. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there isn't really much. So if the Hilux is much more mainstream, much more better name, like brand value.
yeah.
So we'll see how they go.
Mm.
Other than that, there isn't quite much to say. I think that this will be another huge hit. As you said, it's being
Mm.
released and very soon. I suspect it'll come with a massive advertising campaign that will let basically everyone know. And next year, we'll see how it competes with the Ranger. I reckon this will beat the Ranger again in 2026.
Okay, that's a
Yeah.
bold prediction. So let's see, let's see how we go. Yeah, I think it is interesting that Toyota suddenly decided to come out with the EV, full battery electric vehicle Hilux, even ahead of like a proper hybrid um Hilux. So that's quite a big statement of intent. And yes, it won't have the same. The reports are saying that it won't have the same towing capacity as the diesel Hilux. So I think it will only be able to tow maybe 1.6 tons, not 3.5 tons. And the range will only be, I think it was 220 kilometers or 230 kilometers, so not very good range. But maybe for fleet buyers, it might make sense. We know that there are a lot of third-party companies that were trying to retrofit uh, BEV powertrain into the old Hilux, so this has kind of killed their business model. So it is what it is. But yeah, let's see how we go. And I think just to finish this topic, even more interesting is that they've also announced that there will be a hydrogen fuel cell Hilux coming in. I think it's 2028. So that's actually piques my interest a little bit more because typically hydrogen fuel cell vehicles have more range and faster refueling than even the latest EVs. So I think I'm interested to see what the capabilities of the hydrogen fuel cell Hilux will be. Granted, there is very, very limited infrastructure in Australia. Like I think there's basically three hydrogen refueling stations in Australia at the moment. So there's not many. Maybe there's a little bit more than three, but the infrastructure isn't there. But for return to base operators who live near a refueling station, it makes sense. So let's see how we go. But I think it's a good step forward by Toyota overall. So yeah, I think we'll leave the Hilux topic there for now. Okay. Now we might move on to our second topic, which is the 2026 Renault Scenic. So Renault is a sort of niche French brand. I think it is probably the most successful French brand in Australia. It's doing better than Peugeot, and Citroën has been pulled from the Australian market, which is a shame, but it is what it is. And they've announced a new, well, this car has been on sale in Europe for a while, but it was recently facelifted and it's now coming to Australia. So the Scenic is sort of their mid-size electric SUV. It's just slightly bigger than the Megane, and you can see it as sort of their competitor to the Tesla Model Y. The what is it? The BYD Sea Lion 7. I think that's their EV, BYD's EV SUV,
Yeah,
Hyundai
yeah.
Ionic 5. That sort of
Ionic 5 is well beyond, I think, what this. I think
the
it doesn't it
price.
start
Yeah.
pricing wise, yeah, it starts a
Yes,
bit more.
yes, yeah. I think from a size perspective, it's probably similar, but pricing wise, yes, the Ionic is more expensive. Yeah, Nissan Ariya, that type of Toyota BZ4X type.
ID4,
ID4, yes, ID4. Yep, that's right. ID4 type market segment. I personally really like this car just because the pricing is quite attractive. So we have two battery capacities, a 60 kilowatt hour battery and an 87 kilowatt hour battery. So what that means is the 60 kilowatt hour battery, the entry level model, starts from 55,990 before on-road costs, and it gives you about 430 kilometers of WLTP range. So I think the realistic range what might be just under maybe 370, 380 kilometers. And then you have the larger battery, which actually gives you 625 kilometers of WLTP range. So that would be real world range, maybe around 550, 560 kilometers. So that's actually, really good range for both battery capacities. And so it starts from 55,990, mid spec with the long range battery, 59,990, and then the top of the range from 65,990. So, not bad pricing. It has all of the safety equipment as standard, really, from the base model up. The only differences are some of the convenience features in the top of the range model, and of course, the larger battery. So you have things like powered seats that are exclusive to the top of the range model, better audio system, and so on. Sam, what are your initial thoughts on this car?
so basically, your this car will have even more problems being sold than even something like the VW ID4 because the reality is that first it's an EV, which automatically means there'll be a stack of people who won't be interested. And then on top of that, even within electric car buying population, you've got Tesla, which is often the default choice for many right reasons for someone looking for an EV. And even if you're not looking at a Tesla, the reality is that the Chinese brands are doing a lot more for similar, if not lower prices and have now even stronger brand recognition, at least certainly companies like BYD compared to Renault. So Renault already struggled to sell their petrol cars here in Australia. I think their Koleos and stuff is the sort of most mainstream.
Mm,
And this car is decent value, but it's not good enough value, in my opinion, to
mm,
still be competing with the Chinese. Or you pay a bit more and you get a more established brand like a Tesla, Hyundai, etc. It's sort of in that middle sort of ground where it's not really cheap enough to be competing with the Chinese competitively, and it's not obviously good enough or not necessarily not good enough, but doesn't have the name recognition to be competing with the bigger brands.
Mm.
So yes, other than that, it's a very, very good uh sort of seemingly at least good car, though we will wait for Australian reviews. The range is obviously quite attractive. The interior is good because it's unlike many Chinese cars and Tesla cars. It's got the big touch screen, but it also has physical buttons for a lot of your essential controls, which is really important. Uh, on top of that, it looks like basically it will they're launching with a decent range. There are basically options. It comes with Renault's connected services, which is basically the debut here in Australia for it.
Mhm.
So it's got some things going for it, but the reality is that I suspect this will be a good deal in about a year when they start slashing it to prices in the 40s for demo models that have done 100 kilometers. Yes, that's when it'll be a good deal.
Yeah, I will say I really like the interior design and I think Renault, yeah, yes, they don't spend as much on marketing because they probably don't have the resources in Australia to do it as much as the Chinese brands, especially BYD and MG. I think they still have like they've been in Australia for, decades. So they have I think they still have brand recognition just that's been built up historically. Maybe not with the Scenic in particular, which hasn't really been sold. Like the Scenic used to be like a people mover and I think it was last sold in Australia maybe in the early to mid 2000s. Yeah, now it's an SUV and so on. But what I do like about this car in particular is the technology because it has the Android Automotive. So what that means is it has inbuilt Google Maps. So you don't need to, connect your phone with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and you don't need to use your phone's data connection. It has all of that inbuilt into the main infotainment display. So for whatever reason, let's say for example you can't be your phone is out of battery or and you're driving, you can still use Google Maps, which is really cool, and it shows Google Maps on the instrument cluster right in front of you as well. And what it also does, because it's inbuilt, is that when you're route planning it takes into account the state of charge of the battery, and it'll automatically include any EV charging stations. So I think that technology is surprisingly useful in my opinion. I think the design is really cool as well, especially in the rear. You have this very cool rear central armrest, which has an additional two USB ports as well. So you have four USB ports in the back, which is quite a bit. So yeah, look, I will agree with Sambib that sales wise, just because I get the impression that Renault, yeah, they're bringing it, they won't actually market the car too much. Um, these prices, a year down the track, they'll basically be cut by $10,000, like for demo models. So, top of the range model for 55,990 drive away or so, I think that's a much more reasonable price than the 65 or $66,000 effectively that they're charging brand new. So, so my suggestion is it is a good car, but just wait a couple of months and buy a demo or a slightly used model because you'll take advantage of the huge depreciation with EV SUVs at the moment. Okay, Sam, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think that it's good that we're getting more and more competition.
Yeah.
Obviously, while slightly off topic, but on the other end, we know that the BYD Atto 1 has just got its pricing,
Yes. Yeah.
23,990 for
Yeah.
the cheapest. That will be absolutely unreal because that's not just cheap for an EV, that's just cheap for a car,
Exactly. Yeah.
period. Right?
Yeah.
That's like, wow. Like, I'm very keen to see how BYD advertises because that it's a very smart plan. When we did discuss the car, I was saying that what it also will be is that people will get the BYD out of one
Mm.
as their first car and then often stick with BYD for future car purchases, right? Once they get
Yeah.
older and more money, they can get
Yeah.
one of their more expensive, more premium models. But yes, that's the thing. The Chinese are doing stuff that not even mainstream brands can compete with, much less smaller
Yeah.
Euro brands like Renault. So yeah, but more competition is always good.
Exactly. Yeah. I think one of the cool things about the Australian market is how much variety we have. Like we have so many Chinese brands, we have all the European brands, all the Japanese and Korean brands as well. So it's an extremely competitive market, and BYD really have done a good job. I mean, I would buy the BYD over the MG3, which is from a fellow Chinese brand, pretty much any day. So yeah. let's see how we go. And I am interested to see this Renault Scenic on the road in Australia though, because I think it is a very cool looking car, but just won't do as well as Renault hopes, unfortunately. Okay, cool. Now we might move on to our final topic, which is a story out of the US, which is Ford have their F-150, which I believe is the most popular vehicle in the US. So if you include, passenger cars, their version of Utes, which are huge pickup trucks, the F-150 as a model sells. I believe it sells the most. And they Ford a few years ago introduced an electric version of this model, which they call the F-150 Lightning. Was introduced to much fanfare. I think the initial pre-orders were through the roof. Very high initial demand. Looked really cool with the front light bar, the rear light bar. Huge frunk as well, and so on. All aluminium construction. So it was the body itself was light, and that sort of helped compensate for the huge battery and the added weight of the EV powertrain. But more recently, what they've announced is a pause in the F-150 Lightning production from the 15th of November. So they're saying officially that that's because of material sourcing issues, so they can't source the aluminium, or as Americans would say, aluminum, which is the wrong way to say it. But anyway, they they won't be able to source the aluminium to actually build the car. And what they're saying is like, even if we source the aluminium and we get that supply back, we might just decide to just pause production regardless. So they had already halved the production targets back in early 2024. That I think the demand, basically what this is meaning is saying is that the demand has sort of dropped off a cliff for the F-150 Lightning. And yeah, it's not and they've said, some of the reports are saying that they've only sold 23,000 units year to date in the US of the Lightning, which is, given how big the US market is, approximately, 10 million new vehicles, compare 10 times the size of the Australian market. And given how many F-150s are sold, is a very, very small number. It's a very, very small proportion of F-150s as well. And they also have more than 100 days supply of unsold stock. So no, that's almost like more than 3 months of unsold stock that is just sitting around, not generating any revenue for Ford, which is not really, really not good. So yeah, really, unfortunately, a bad sign of EV demand in the US. Sandvid, what do you reckon?
I think it goes to show that EVs are really only going to be relevant in a few specific categories. SUVs,
Mm,
certainly, and on the other end, I think like small city type cars. It's pretty
mm,
clear that the demand for EVs, certainly in commercial vehicles, unless if you're talking massive vehicles like trucks and stuff
mm.
and buses, is not really there yet. We can already see it with the Tesla Cybertruck
Yeah,
as well. Yes, very different type, but similar idea, right? The
yeah,
whole idea being that, and again, this is probably why Toyota's still sticking for their new HiLux with their very traditional engine technology with some mild hybrid assistance. Yes, we said they're introducing a BEV, but that will be in very limited capacity because I think I kind of get it as well. It's well known that EVs have good range, but some of the things that that are demanded of commercial vehicles like utes and trucks, EVs aren't necessarily good for those things, towing, etc. They're not very good, and on
yeah.
top of that, range drops fast.
Mm,
Because F-150 is pretty much known as the best electric ute truck you can get,
mm,
broadly speaking.
yeah.
And if even Ford is struggling, then obviously it shows that the market is just not there. The technology probably isn't there yet. And
Mm,
maybe in another decade, when the electric vehicle technology improves, then you might see EV sales of this particular segment of car improve.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be like I think in the US you have options like the Rivian, which is supposed to has been received and reviewed very well, and they seem to be expanding. So I think it's a story of contrast as well to a degree. Like you have all of these startups in the US. There's the Amazon-backed one, which uh, was going to be selling a small, I mean, obviously much smaller than the F-150, but it was going to be selling an EV pickup for what was it? I think it's $20,000 US starting price, and then you would add on whatever accessories that you wanted. So there are options, but I think I think Ford was sort of assuming when they had first introduced the Lightning that, it would just rapidly just take off, and that hasn't happened. And you can see with some of the other competitors as well that they've revised some of their plans. So Ram, for example, have introduced a new 1500, and they were initially going to produce both a battery electric version, and then they had was it the Ram Charger, which is their range extender model, and now they've basically dropped plans to produce the battery electric version, and they're focusing on the range extender model. So range extender is a little bit different from a plug-in hybrid. The range extender is that you do have a combustion engine, you do have a petrol or a diesel engine, but it never drives the wheels directly. It's there solely as a generator to sort of power the battery. So which is an interesting concept, but yeah, that's proving to be sort of a more popular choice in the EV segment. And again, EV youth segment. And again, you can see why, like Anna Sandberg was mentioning issues with range and towing capacity. I think with EV utes, they just, aerodynamics is a huge factor. Like that plays a massive factor in EV range. And EV commercial vehicles are probably the least aerodynamic vehicles that you can probably buy. And that really cuts the range, even if you have like a huge battery capacity. So yeah, but in the US, you can see a lot of the mainstream brands. Hummer had the EV as well, EV as well, with the ones that could crab walk. There was a huge vehicle, huge battery, and they've basically said had no demand. Well, not no demand, but very limited demand for that as well. I think the way to go at the moment for EV commercial vehicles is having that hybrid or that um, range extender setup. So you can see there's another brand in the US called Scout, which is basically a Volkswagen Group owned
I was
brand.
gonna
But
say, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, um, but they have like it will be exclusive to America initially, but they're really leaning into that off-road type, wilderness type market, and with these sort of retro futuristic designs, it looks amazing. Like if you see the Scouts, um, how their concepts look, which are very very close to production, but even then they have two options. They've gone with the full electric BEV powertrain, and then they have that uh, range extender powertrain as well. And the split with the interest and the pre-orders has been, I think, very heavily in favor of the range extender model. So you can see sort of like not a lot of mainstream brands are pulling back from going all in on BEVs, and they're sort of saying, yes, we will, if we offer BEVs, we will complement that with a range extender or a hybrid option as well, because we don't want to put all of our eggs in the battery electric basket just yet. The demand hasn't been as quick as we or as demand hasn't ramped up as much as we thought it would. So yeah, let's see what happens. It will be a shame, I think, from Ford's purposes, if they stop making the F-150 Lightning. Like I do hope they keep making it, but we might see a temporary pause, and then maybe down the track when demand does uh, increase, or there are more, or the technology improves for it to be a little bit more viable, then we might see a restart in production with a more improved model. So yeah, Sam, do you have any closing comments to add to that?
I think that right now we're sort of at this, like 2, 3 years ago, or 4 years, basically 2020, 2021, everyone was like, EVs are the future, we're going to do
Mm,
EV everything. But now it's pretty clear that yes, EVs are the future for certain cars, certain car segments, but the reality is not the future for everything, at least not at the state that current things are in and looking at alternative options like not alternatives, well, the alternatives like hybrids or like you said, fuel range extended, etc., are probably more going to be the best rather than being like everything has to be full BEV. Yes, you want to incorporate some level of an electric powertrain into most cars, but doesn't need to be full battery electric. Having a blend of both still achieves what you want, which is lower emissions, etc., while still making sure that there's a flexibility for different car buyers and their needs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think you need to have that sort of, and I know I'm sort of borrowing the Toyota corporate line here as an ex-Toyota employee, but yeah, it's a multi-pathway approach and leaving nobody behind, so to speak. So yeah, give consumers the option, and rather than forcing them into one particular powertrain, and let them decide. And right now, I think hybrids are very popular as a sort of transition technology. So let's see how we go. Okay, cool. I think we might pause it there for this week's episode of the Hook Turn podcast. Thank you very much for listening to us. We really appreciate our loyal listeners. We know there's only a few of them, but we appreciate them listening to us and tuning in every week. So thank you very much for your patronage. Word of mouth is important, so refer it on to your friends, family, etc. if you enjoy listening to us. And yeah, give us a like and a subscribe and hopefully a 5-star rating on all of the major platforms. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, iHeartRadio, a few others that I've forgotten as well. But anyway. So yeah, cool. All right. I think we might end it there and we will talk to you next week. Thank you very much. Bye.